I want to dispel a little bit of a myth today. As you can see, I have sheep instead of pigs, so I guess you might not call me an expert. There's some lambs behind the camera. When I'm doing farm chores, I like to listen to Joe Rogan on occasion, and this topic has come up several times. I can recall at least two, but it's happened most likely a lot more than that. So the topic I'm talking about is whether domestic pigs become feral in a couple of weeks and their bones change. It's total malarkey. Behind me are hair sheep. They are not wool sheep, they're hair sheep. So as a little thought experiment, if I had wool sheep that got out and became feral, would they become hair sheep because there's no one to shear them? No. There's stories of sheep that have been in the wilderness for months or years, and they have years worth of growth on them because what's bred into these animals don't just change. Their DNA doesn't just change over a couple of weeks in the wild. Also, I'd like to point out, what's the difference between what's behind me and the wild? A fence. If you had pigs on pasture, they're essentially wild already. They just have a farmer taking care of them. They feed them on occasion, they move them. You try to get as much wild forage to give the animals so you don't have to pay for feed. That's the cool thing about animals, is this gets rained on, it gets sunlight, and it grows, and it feeds the sheep or the pigs in this example. Not a one-to-one, because I have sheep, I don't have pigs. So don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There is some validity to the argument of breeding. If you had domestic pigs on pasture that got out and they survived and they bred with wild pigs, you'd start getting more wild traits. So that is true. Over several generations of breeding, you could take your naked, hairless, roughly, pig, and they would get hairier, their snouts would change over generations. That's just breeding, they're different species. And the hairless pigs probably won't survive because hair is pretty necessary for wild animals. Also, I'd like to say the term feral just means wild, especially if it was once domesticated. So saying they're feral pigs is technically true, but their snout doesn't change, they don't get more restless or anything, they don't grow big tusks. They just remain the same. They will probably lose weight because they're not getting the supplemental feed. They're surviving for themselves, they're walking around a lot more. But they're still the same thing. A tomato is always going to be a tomato. It's not going to become a pepper just because you grow it in Mexico. That's just not how nature works. And I can't believe this misinformation's been broadcasted so much over such a big a platform. There's a sheep in my hand right now. I just can't believe no one's combated this, to my knowledge at least, thus far. It's been years he's had on farmers that haven't even corrected him on it. And I've heard this not just from Joe Rogan. I mean, he doesn't care about me, but I'm not singling him out for anything. It's just, I heard it today and I had to bring it up because it's just so annoying to me when this stuff happens. So the wild pigs are Eurasian wild boars. are razorbacks, and because of interbreeding, they're, not technically that anymore. I mean, things change over years. Even heirloom and heritage breeds, they change over the years. But they were brought over here for hunting purposes, and when they go up north, it's again hunting facilities that are losing the pigs, and they then become feral, but they're already of that genetic makeup. They're not changing. They're a wild pig that's in captivity, or a Eurasian wild boar in captivity for hunting purposes. They escape, and then they can reproduce with other wild boars or with domestic boars. So that's pretty much it. I can't believe that this misinformation's been reproduced so much over the internet. It's just mind-blowing to me that people think this. Why? Like, how would an animal that's fully grown after 2 weeks completely go through some kind of a shift to be something completely different? It just makes no sense if you think about it for a few minutes at least. So I had to get that off my chest. This has been bothering me for a while now. So the next time you hear this lie, correct the person that's saying it. Please stop this lie in its tracks, because people are avoiding getting pigs because they think they'll escape and they'll become feral, and then your state will be overrun with these wild boars eating all the cornfields and soybean fields and creating this big issue. It's just not going to happen. You should definitely keep your pigs in. You have a monetary reason to do that. But as long as they're well fed, they're like everything. They need food, water, and shelter. If you provide that to your animals, they won't want to get out. I have a ton of chickens. They stay here because they get food, water, and shelter. They're free-range chickens. They can go anywhere they want to. They choose to stay here because their needs are met. My sheep, the lambs are small enough to escape through pretty much all my gates, through the fence, underneath the fence. They don't, because they need food, water, and shelter, and they have all that here. So again, please stop saying this lie. If you hear this lie, please inform whoever says it that it is a lie, so we can, clear up the zeitgeist around pigs.